Somewhere tonight, in a house full of gold and marble, a man is about to burn everything his wife owns, her wedding photographs, her clothes, even the teddy bear she kept since the day they met. He will do it because another woman told him to. He will do it without knowing that the woman he is destroying is the same woman who once pulled him out of a burning car and saved his life. 7 years. 7 years of silence, of cold dinners, of a marriage that looked perfect from the outside and was hollow on the inside. And in the next few minutes you are going to watch that marriage collapse, piece by piece. But before it collapses, I want to ask you something. If you found out today that the person you trusted most had been lying to you for 7 straight years, would you forgive them? Or would you walk away and never look back? Type your answer in the comments before we begin. I read every single one of them, and trust me, by the end of the story your answer might change. Welcome back to Secrets of Destiny. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to watch is one of the most emotional betrayal and redemption stories we've ever told. And if you're one of our regulars, you already know what's coming. Buckle up. This is the story of Tan Qingli, a woman who gave 7 years of her life to a man who never once said, "Thank you." A woman who was humiliated, discarded, and betrayed in front of the entire company she helped build. And a woman who, when the whole world turned its back on her, rose from the ashes and became something no one, not even she, ever expected. Let's begin. To understand how deep this betrayal cuts, you first need to understand what Tan Qingli's life actually looked like from the outside. She was the wife of Pei Zi, heir to one of the wealthiest business empires in the southern city. A conglomerate so large that its name alone could move stock markets. To the outside world, Tan Qingli had won the lottery of life. Beautiful home, unlimited money, a husband who, on paper, could give her anything she wanted. But paper lies. Behind the marble walls of the Pei mansion, Tan Qingli lived a life that looked nothing like the fairy tale everyone assumed. For 7 years, she worked inside the family company, not as a pampered trophy wife, but as a woman who buried herself in spreadsheets and late-night strategy meetings, trying to prove, to a husband who barely looked at her, that she was worth something. She slept in a separate room, not because she wanted to, because he told her to. 7 years of marriage, and Pei Zi never once treated her the way a husband should treat a wife. He was cold, distant, sometimes cruel in ways that weren't loud, but were somehow worse. The silence, the indifference, the sense that she was invisible in her own home. And there was one more thing hanging over her head every single day like a blade waiting to fall. Prenuptial agreement. Buried in the fine print of their marriage contract was a single, brutal clause. If Tan Qingli failed to give birth to Pei Zi's child within 7 years, the 20% stake in the Pei company that she inherited from her late father, a stake that was rightfully hers, would transfer permanently into her husband's hands. 7 years. That number wasn't just a wedding anniversary to her. It was a countdown, a ticking clock that would decide whether she kept the one thing her father left her, or lost it forever to a man who had never loved her. And here's the detail that will make your stomach turn. Pei Zi knew from the very beginning that Qingli would never be able to have his child, because he never loved her, because his heart, his entire 7 years of devotion, belonged to someone else entirely. A woman named Lin Shuyu. Now stay with me here, because this is where the story gets its teeth. 7 years earlier, before Pei Zi ever married Tan Qingli, there had been a car accident. A violent, near-fatal collision that should have ended his life on the side of a dark road. He remembered almost nothing from that night, except one thing. A figure. A silhouette pulling him from the wreckage before the flames could reach him. A stranger who saved his life and then vanished into the darkness without a name, without a face he could clearly recall. For years, Pei Zi held onto that memory like a religion. He believed, with absolute certainty, that the person who saved him was a woman named Lin Shuyu. He never questioned it. He never verified it. He simply believed because somewhere in his grief-stricken mind, believing gave him something to hold on to. So when Lin Shuyu came back into his life after years abroad, claiming to be that very woman, Pei didn't hesitate for a second. He married Tan Qingli out of family obligation and business necessity. But his heart, his loyalty, his gratitude, his devotion, had already been given away to a woman who, as you are about to find out, was lying to him from the very first sentence she ever spoke. Because the real person who pulled Pei from that burning car wasn't Lin Xiuyu. It was Tan Qingli. Let that sink in for a moment. The woman he humiliated. The woman he ignored for 7 years. The woman he was ready to throw away the moment her time ran out. She was the one who saved his life in the first place. And she never told him. Not once in 7 years did Tan Qingli use that truth as leverage. She never tried to guilt him into loving her. She simply carried the secret quietly, the same way she carried everything else in that marriage. Alone. Why would you keep something like that hidden for 7 years? Why would you let someone believe a lie, even when the truth could have changed everything? Hold that question, because the answer to it is going to break your heart later in this story. For now, all you need to know is this. Pei built his entire emotional world on a false foundation. And that foundation was about to come crashing down, but not before it crushed Tan Qingli first. Lin Xiuyu didn't come back quietly. She came back with a plan. Years abroad had not been kind to her. What Pei didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that Lin Xiuyu's time overseas had been anything but respectable. She had drifted through a life of excess, entangled herself with a man named Zhang Keheo, a reckless gambler who eventually abandoned her buried under his own debts. When his creditors came looking for someone to collect from, Lin Xiuyu didn't wait around to pay the price. She ran home, and when she arrived, she needed something, someone, powerful enough to erase her past and secure her future. Pei, with his family fortune and his guilt-driven devotion to his savior, was the perfect target. She stepped back into his life and immediately became indispensable. Within days, Pei named her his personal secretary, moving her into an office just steps from his own. A corner office that had taken Tan Qingli 7 grueling years to earn. 7 years of late nights. 7 years of building relationships, closing deals, proving her worth in a company built by a family that never fully accepted her. And it took Lin Xiuyu less than a week to walk in and take it from her. Picture the scene. Tan Qingli walks into her office one morning to find her nameplate has already been removed. Pei doesn't even bother explaining it to her face. He simply tells her the space now belongs to someone else, and that she should clear out immediately. When Qingli, stunned, humiliated, asks who gave the order, the answer lands like a slap. Pei did. Personally. This is the moment the mask started to slip. This is the moment the perfect marriage the outside world believed in began revealing its rot. And it only got worse from there. There's a particular kind of cruelty that doesn't come from a single explosive moment. It comes from 1,000 small ones, stacked on top of each other until the weight becomes unbearable. That's exactly what happened to Tan Qingli in the weeks that followed. First, it was the office. Then it was the ring. Lin Xiuyu began wearing a ring, an exact replica of the wedding band Pei had given Qingli 7 years earlier. A custom design. Not something you could buy off a shelf. Not something that could exist twice by accident. When confronted in front of the entire office, Pei didn't deny it. He simply shrugged it off, claiming Lin Xiuyu's professional skills justified the gift. Think about what that means. A married man standing in the middle of his own company, casually admitting he gave his mistress a copy of his wife's wedding ring, and treating it like a footnote. The employees around them went silent. Whispers started. "Are you going to switch wives, Mr. Pei?" Someone dared to ask. And his answer was even colder than the question. "If you're so bored here, then leave. From now on, this office belongs to Xiuyu." He told his own wife, his actual legal wife, that there was a spare corner near the restrooms she could use instead. Everything that had once belonged to Tan Qingli, her office, her position, her dignity, was being systematically handed over to another woman, in full view of the people who once respected her. But Pei wasn't finished. That same night, he did something that revealed exactly how far his cruelty was willing to go. Millions worth of antiques. Wine collections passed down through the Pei family for generations. Every item in Tan Qingli's private bedroom, smashed, shattered, destroyed on Pei Zi's direct orders. Why? Because Lin Xiaoyu had staged a small, deliberate lie, claiming Qingli had attacked her, and Pei Zi didn't ask a single question before ordering his security team to tear his wife's bedroom apart. Vases worth fortunes, thrown against marble floors. Wine collections poured out and shattered. Even the 5 luxury cars in her private garage were ordered burned. Now here's a detail that should make you pause. Among the wreckage was a stuffed teddy bear. A small, sentimental keepsake that Tan Qingli had quietly kept. Something Pei Zi himself had once thrown away, years earlier, without a second thought. She had gone back for it. She had rescued it from the trash and kept it hidden, safe, cherished. A strange, quiet act of hope from a woman who still believed, somewhere deep down, that her marriage meant something. That night they burned it, along with everything else. Whatever thrown away means unloved, she thought, standing in the ruins of her own bedroom. I just forgot. 5 days. That's how much time was left before the 7-year clock on her prenuptial agreement would strike 0. 5 days before Pei Zi could legally strip her of the 20% company stake that was the last thing her father had ever given her. And in those 5 days, Tan Qingli made a decision that would change everything. She decided to disappear. While Pei Zi was busy destroying her bedroom and parading his mistress through the halls of the company, Tan Qingli was quietly making moves of her own. Moves that no one, not even the audience watching this unfold, would see coming. She began attending investment meetings, not as the neglected wife of Pei Zi, but as a sharp, calculated businesswoman with access to capital no one knew she had. At one of these meetings, a massive bidding war broke out over a cutting-edge AI investment project. Lin Xiaoyu, flaunting sudden and suspicious wealth, tried to outbid everyone in the room, throwing around numbers in the tens of billions, numbers that made absolutely no sense for a woman who, just weeks earlier, was fleeing gambling debts overseas. Tan Qingli matched her, bid for bid, until the room fell into stunned silence. Where is all this money coming from? People whispered. The tension in that room was a preview of the war that was about to erupt across the entire company. Because behind the scenes, a mysterious, unnamed backer had entered the picture. A man later revealed to be connected to the powerful Lu family, quietly outbidding everyone, again and again, on a rival AI project. No one knew who he was. No one knew why he was so determined to win. But his presence was about to become the single most important twist in this entire story. Remember that name, Lu, because in less than an hour of story time, that name is going to turn everything you think you understand about this story upside down. 5 days became 3. 3 became 1. And on that final day, Tan Qingli did something that stunned everyone who thought they understood her. She sold her 20% stake in the Pei company, not to her husband, not to keep it in the family, but to an outside buyer connected to the Lu conglomerate. Then she signed the divorce papers, quietly, without a scene, without tears in front of anyone who could see them. She resigned from her position, packed what little was left of her belongings, and walked out of the company she had spent 7 years building. By the time Pei Zi realized what had happened, it was already done. His own father-in-law's legacy, 20% of a company empire, had slipped through his fingers into the hands of a rival family, and he hadn't even seen it coming, because he was too busy chasing a woman who was lying to him about almost everything. When his sister told him the news, Tan Qingli filed for resignation, signed the divorce, and left. Pei Zi's reaction wasn't anger. It was confusion. How could Tan Qingli possibly agree to a divorce? He kept asking himself. Somewhere underneath 7 years of coldness, a small, uncomfortable feeling was beginning to stir in him. One he didn't yet have the emotional vocabulary to name. He told himself it didn't matter. He told himself he'd finally gotten what he wanted. Freedom to be with Lin Xiaoyu. Freedom to build the future he thought he'd been dreaming of for years. But if that were true, why did it feel like something inside his chest had just been ripped out? Here's where the story shifts from a domestic drama into a full-blown corporate war, and where Tan Qingli's quiet, calculated intelligence finally reveals itself. The moment her 20% stake changed hands, the Liu family's stake in Pei Enterprises crossed 51%, controlling interest. In the span of a single signature, Pei Zi lost control of the company his family had built over generations. Not through some dramatic hostile takeover you'd see in a boardroom thriller, but because he was too distracted, too arrogant, and too blind to notice what was happening right under his nose. The company's stock price collapsed. Panic spread through the executive offices. Pei Zi, scrambling, drained every emergency fund the company had, mortgaged his own private estate, leveraged every share he personally owned, all in a desperate, chaotic attempt to buy back control before it was too late. And in the middle of that chaos, Lin Xiaoyu made her move. She suggested, no, she pushed, for an emergency wedding. A public spectacle, announcing that the Pei family had a new heir on the way, hoping the announcement alone would calm the markets and stabilize the stock price. Pei Zi agreed instantly, which tells you everything you need to know about where his priorities actually were. Now, let's rewind for a moment, because there's a second man in this story whose importance you have not fully understood yet, and his role is about to become the emotional core of everything that follows. His name is Liu Tingxin, president of the Liu financial conglomerate. Wealthy beyond comprehension, powerful enough to bankrupt an entire company empire in 3 hours if he chose to, and the man secretly bidding astronomical sums to protect Tan Qingli's business interests. Anonymously, long before she even realized who was helping her. Their paths crossed one drunken night, after a chance encounter neither of them planned. What began as a single impulsive night together spiraled, almost comically, into a proposal, a genuine, if unconventional marriage offer, sweetened by an offer of 30% of the Liu Corporation as what he jokingly called a bride price. Qingli, freshly divorced and utterly exhausted by 7 years of being unwanted, was blunt with him. I was already married once, she told him. His response revealed something Pei Zi never once demonstrated in 7 years of marriage: genuine tenderness. I know, he said. You only recently divorced, right? But what happened that night was real. We're both adults. Isn't that enough? He told her about his father, seriously ill, his one dying wish being to see his son married and settled with a family of his own. He asked, simply and sincerely, if she would help him grant that wish. Even after she reminded him again that she'd already been married once, his answer didn't waver. You've already been married once. Do you still want to marry me? There was no hesitation in his voice. 3 days later, they were married. But here is where the story takes its first truly staggering turn, the kind of revelation that recontextualizes everything you thought you understood up to this point. When Qingli arrived at the Liu family estate as its newest bride, an elderly household attendant greeted her with words that stopped her cold. Of course I know you, the woman said. Your photograph has hung on the wall of his bedroom for over 10 years. 10 years. Qingli, understandably stunned, asked how that was possible. She had only just met Liu Tingxin. The attendant explained. On the day Qingli married Pei Zi, 7 years earlier, Liu Tingxin had locked himself away for 10 days straight, drinking until he collapsed from internal bleeding. He had to be rushed into emergency surgery to save his life. He waited for you for 10 years, the attendant said, like the legendary weaver girl who waited 18 years in a cold hut for her lost love. He never stopped searching for any scrap of news about you, and every time he learned something new, he'd disappear into despair for days. We were always afraid that one day, he simply wouldn't survive it. Qingli stood frozen, trying to make sense of an impossible truth. We only just met, she said quietly. How could he have loved me for so long? The answer to that question, the real, full answer, is coming. And when it arrives, it's going to connect every single loose thread in this story into one devastating picture. But before we get there, we need to go back to that burning car. Because everything, every lie, every heartbreak, every twist, traces back to that single night on a dark road, years before this story even began. Remember the accident. Remember the man Pei Zi believed Lin Xiaoyu saved. Here's the truth Pei Zi never bothered to verify in 7 years. He wasn't the only person in danger that night. There were 2 accident victims, 2 people badly injured, and in the chaos of the wreckage, Pei made a split-second decision that would haunt him for the rest of the story. He ordered the rescue team to save the other victim first, the one he believed to be more critical, while a second woman lay bleeding, unattended, nearby. That second woman was Tan Qingli. She wasn't a stranger who happened to save him and vanish into the night. She had a real connection to that accident, a connection Pei never once bothered to investigate, because he had already decided years earlier exactly who his savior was supposed to be. And Lin Xiaoyu, desperate, opportunistic, always ready to seize whatever advantage presented itself, simply let him believe it. She never corrected him. Not once, in 7 years, did she tell Pei the truth, because that lie was the entire foundation of her plan to marry into his fortune. Meanwhile, the real story of what happened that night belonged to someone else entirely. A young man who, years earlier, had been saved from a violent street beating by a brave teenage girl who happened to be passing by. That girl was Tan Qingli. That young man was Lu Tingxian. He never forgot her. He spent 10 years trying to find her again, the girl who saved him without asking for anything in return, who told him afterward, simply, "I only saved you out of pity. Don't get into any more fights." 10 years later, he finally found her again. Married to another man, trapped in a loveless marriage, being humiliated in a company that should have honored her. And he waited, patiently, persistently, until the moment came when he could finally step forward. There's a scene in this story that deserves its own spotlight, because it's the moment everything nearly ended in tragedy, and the moment that revealed, once and for all, who the real hero of this story actually was. Lin Xiaoyu, growing increasingly paranoid and desperate as her carefully constructed lies began to unravel, orchestrated a dangerous scheme against Tan Qingli. A staged attack designed to look like an accident, meant to eliminate the one person capable of exposing her. In the chaos that followed, a fire, a desperate scramble, bodies pulled from danger at the very last second. It was Lu Tingxian who arrived in time, who pulled her from the flames, who stood over her unconscious body screaming for medical help while Pei tellingly, hesitated. "We must treat the patient first," doctors insisted, trying to save both Qingli and, unknown to everyone at the time, the unborn child she was carrying. "I'm her husband," Lu Tingxian said, a title he had only recently earned, but one he claimed with more conviction than Pei had shown in 7 entire years of actual marriage. When Qingli finally woke, stitched together after emergency surgery, the first thing she learned was that the baby had survived, and that the man sitting beside her bed, refusing to leave for even a moment, wasn't the husband she had spent 7 years trying to please. It was the one who had waited 10 years just for the chance to matter to her. Here's where all the threads finally, irreversibly collide. Weeks later, during a moment of quiet intimacy, Tan Qingli noticed something on Lu Tingxian's body that made her entire world stop. "A scar." "But you don't have a scar," she said, confused, remembering the boy she'd saved years earlier had been badly injured in exactly that spot. He explained, almost sheepishly, that he'd undergone skin grafting surgery years ago specifically to remove it. And in that instant, every piece of the puzzle locked into place. Lu Tingxian was the boy from the street fight all those years ago. Lu Tingxian was the man whose life she'd saved. Not once, but twice. In 2 completely different moments of crisis, 7 years apart. Lu Tingxian was the reason a wealthy household had kept her photograph on a bedroom wall for over a decade, waiting for the day she'd finally walk through the door. And somewhere, in a mansion built on lies, Pei still believed the woman he'd built his entire life. Around was Lin Xiaoyu, the woman who had let a false narrative define 7 years of a marriage that was never meant to happen in the first place. The truth had been sitting in front of him the entire time. He simply never bothered to look. Now we arrive at one of the most electric, high-stakes moments in this entire story. The emergency wedding Pei and Lin Xiaoyu staged to save the company's collapsing stock price. Except Lin Xiaoyu never showed up. Guests waited.
Pei pačet.
Assistants called her phone over a dozen times with no answer. Finally, Someone tracked her down. Not preparing for her wedding, not anxiously waiting at home, but sitting in a bar, drinking, having apparently lost track of time entirely. When confronted, her real motivations spilled out with brutal honesty to a friend who had no idea she was even being recorded. "He's drowning in debt right now," she admitted. "If I marry him, all those debts become mine. I'm not stupid." The mask had finally slipped. All the devotion Pei believed Lin Xiaoyu felt for him was, from the very beginning, nothing more than a calculated financial transaction. One she was now abandoning the second it stopped being profitable. And the recording of that confession found its way, eventually, into exactly the right hands. What followed was one of the most satisfying collapses you will ever witness in a story like this. At a public event, surrounded by investors, employees, and members of the Pei family, the truth about Lin Xiaoyu detonated in real time. Fabricated photographs she'd used to frame Tan Qingli were exposed as forgeries. An audio recording surfaced, Lin Xiaoyu's own voice, caught admitting she never actually cared for Pei Zi, that she'd only wanted to see him abandon his wife and come running to her. Worse still, it came out that the child she'd claimed wasn't his at all. The room that had once whispered about Tan Qingli's supposed unworthiness now turned its judgment on the woman who had spent months destroying her. Pei Zi's own parents, who had grown to love Tan Qingli like a daughter over 7 years, who had only recently learned that Qingli had quietly cared for her father-in-law through a 3-month hospital stay without ever telling anyone, without ever asking for credit, stood in front of everyone and declared their loyalty. "We only recognize Qingli as our daughter-in-law," they said. "Cancel the wedding with Lin Xiaoyu." But by then, it was already too late for that wedding to matter anyway. Because the woman everyone had gathered to see marry Pei Zi wasn't the woman he was chasing that night. He was already on a private plane, racing toward a different wedding entirely, one where the bride wasn't his to begin with. Picture the scene. A grand ceremony, elegant and glowing, guests seated in perfect rows, waiting for the officiant to ask the traditional question. "Do you, Lu Tingxin, take Tan Qingli to be your lawfully wedded wife, in sickness and in health?" "I do." "Do you, Tan Qingli, take Lu Tingxin to be your husband?" "I do." And then chaos. Pei Zi burst through the doors of the ceremony, breathless, desperate, shouting for Qingli not to go through with it. The entire room turned in stunned silence. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Isn't that the head of the Pei family? Didn't he just call off his own wedding to Lin Xiaoyu?" "I was wrong," Pei Zi said, his voice cracking in front of hundreds of witnesses. "It was you who saved me from that fire all those years ago, not her. I spent 7 years treating the wrong person like my savior, which is exactly why I treated you the way I did." Qingli's response was devastating in its calm, quiet honesty. "And what does that change? Even if you got the wrong savior, I stood beside you for 7 years, thousands of days and nights, and it still wasn't enough for you to love me. Doesn't that prove something entirely different? That the problem was never about who saved you. It was that you never loved me at all." Pei Zi tried to argue otherwise. He claimed he'd been falling for her all along, that the moment he learned the baby wasn't his and the fake rescue story unraveled, he didn't feel anger, he felt relief. "That's when I understood," he said. "I've loved you the entire time." But words, at this point in the story, meant almost nothing. Because the damage of 7 years cannot be undone by a single dramatic confession at someone else's wedding. Lu Tingxin, understandably, didn't tolerate a rival showing up at his own wedding to declare love for his bride. "You've barely known Qingli any time at all," Pei Zi challenged him. "What relationship do you even have with her?" Lu Tingxin's answer was simple, unwavering, and utterly devastating in its confidence. "All I know is that Qingli is my wife now, and you're just a man who cheated on his marriage and rightfully got left behind." Pei Zi, desperate, made one final offer. The entire Pei corporate empire, worth hundreds of billions, in exchange for Qingli walking away with him instead. Lu Tingxin didn't even hesitate. "I don't need it. I only want Qingli." And then, in front of everyone, Pei Zi learned the truth he had been too blind to see for 7 years. Qingli was pregnant. Not with his child. With Lu Tingxin's. 10 generations, Lu Tingshan's father cried out, gripping his chest. 10 generations of a single bloodline, and it can't end with us. For one horrifying moment, the story teeters on collapse. Because what if the child truly wasn't his? What if Pei Zi's desperate lie about a secretly purchased sperm sample was actually true? The tension in that room was suffocating. And here, right when the story seems ready to spiral into devastation, comes the final, satisfying twist. Pei Zi, in a last, cruel attempt to keep Qingli from leaving, claimed he knew who the real father of her child was, dangling the information over her like a weapon, refusing to reveal it unless she came back to him. But Lu Tingshan already knew. Years earlier, before ever meeting Qingli again, worried that his family bloodline might end with him, Lu Tingshan had quietly stored a genetic sample for future use. A private medical decision made out of anxiety, not romance. Somehow, mysteriously, that sample had been acquired by Pei Zi, without ever realizing whose it truly was. The very secret weapon Pei Zi believed would destroy Lu Tingshan's happiness turned out to be the final piece of evidence proving the child belonged to Lu Tingshan all along. The room that had gasped in horror moments earlier now understood the full, staggering irony of what had just happened. Pei Zi hadn't sabotaged his rival's happiness. He had personally delivered Qingli into the arms of a man who genuinely loved her. In the aftermath, everything Pei Zi built on lies came crashing down at once. His company, weakened by his own recklessness, teetering on bankruptcy after his stock buyback gamble failed to stabilize the market. His health deteriorating under the weight of stress and consequence, until he collapsed and spent days in critical condition, and woke to devastating news. The accident he'd orchestrated against Qingli in a fit of jealous rage had also injured him severely enough to damage his own body beyond repair. He would never father a child of his own again. "This is my punishment," he said quietly, staring at a future he could no longer control. And Lin Xiaoyu, the woman he'd sacrificed his marriage, his dignity, and his family's trust for, suffered her own miscarriage in the same accident, along with permanent, irreversible medical consequences of her own. Two people, once so certain their affair was worth destroying a marriage over, left with nothing but the wreckage of everything they'd broken to get there. Even Pei Zi's own parents, who had once hoped desperately for a reconciliation, eventually accepted the truth. Some mistakes, Qingli told them gently, once committed, simply cannot be undone. She returned the 20% company stake she still legally held, not out of loyalty to Pei Zi, but out of genuine gratitude for the 7 years his parents had treated her with kindness he never showed her himself. And then, finally, she walked away. For good. The final chapters of this story unfold with a warmth that feels earned after everything that came before. Tan Qingli, now firmly established as chairwoman of the Lu family conglomerate, with Lu Tingshan's parents transferring their shares directly into her name as both a wedding gift and a statement of absolute trust, builds a life defined by everything her first marriage never gave her. Respect, partnership, a husband who worries when she's 5 minutes late coming home, who insists on personally supervising her pregnancy checkups, who prepares her favorite childhood meal with his own hands, learning her preferences with an attentiveness Pei Zi never once demonstrated in 7 full years. When their daughter is finally born, Lu Tingshan holds her with the same reverence he once held Qingli's photograph for a decade. A man who waited so long for a love he wasn't sure would ever come, finally holding proof that it had. Even in these quiet final scenes, Pei Zi lingers at the edges of the story, leaving gifts anonymously for the daughter that could have been his, quietly accepting that the family he destroyed was never coming back. It's a small, human detail, and it matters because it shows this story never demonized him into a cartoon villain. He was simply a man who spent 7 years chasing the wrong ghost, and lost everything real in the process. By the end, Tan Qingli isn't just rebuilding her life. She's the one holding all the power, corporate, personal, emotional, that was once used against her. And the man who once told her she wasn't worthy of sitting in his office spends the rest of his life watching, from a distance, everything he threw away. So here's the question I want you to sit with. Tan Qingli spent 7 years being invisible in her own marriage. 7 years of silence, humiliation, and a husband who never once bothered to ask who she really was underneath all that quiet endurance. And the moment she stopped waiting to be chosen, the moment she stopped trying to earn love from someone who was never capable of giving it, everything she deserved finally found its way to her. That's not just a plot twist. That's a truth a lot of us need to hear. Sometimes the people who love us the loudest aren't the ones standing right in front of us, demanding our attention. Sometimes they're the ones who've been quietly waiting patiently for years, for the moment we finally stop settling for less than we deserve. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Pei deserved a second chance? Or did he lose that right the moment he chose silence over 7 straight years? Was Tan Qingli right to forgive his parents but never him? And be honest. If you were in her position, could you have walked away as gracefully as she did? Or would you have burned it all down first? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one, and I promise you, some of the best conversations on this channel happen right there in that comment section. If the story moved you, made you angry, made you cheer out loud at any point, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. This channel, Secrets of Destiny, exists because of viewers like you who show up for these stories week after week. Give this video a like if you made it all the way to the end. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that walking away is sometimes the most powerful thing you'll ever do, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Because trust me, the next one might just be even more unbelievable than this. Until then, take care of yourselves and remember, destiny doesn't always look like what you expected. Sometimes it looks like someone who's been quietly waiting for you the entire time. See you in the next one.